For Aureus Notaris, I'm going to go over calibrating the Prusa 3D printer. If you ever adjust anything in the nozzle area, you're probably going to have to calibrate X, Y, and Z. We're going to go through the process of doing all today. I have preheated my nozzle and my bed so I can remove any extra material. I'm going to take a brass brush and clean it off. I want to check, make sure none of my cables are going to get in the way. And then just brush off the hot bed and remove the steel sheet. You can set that to the side for now as it's not necessary. Next thing you're going to want to do is come down to your Prusa controls. Click on the main button, scroll down to calibration, and click calibrate XYZ. The printer will begin running through a series of motions and you'll follow on-screen prompts as you run through this. First on-screen prompt is going to ask you once again to clean the nozzle. I always do it even if the nozzle looks fairly clean. You just want to make sure that there's absolutely nothing that's going to get in the way. It's going to ask you then, is the steel sheet on the hotbed? We've removed it, so we will hit no. It's then going to tell you to place a sheet of plain printer paper underneath the nozzle, and if the nozzle catches the printer paper at any point in time, to stop the printer immediately. You can do that by clicking the X button. It will start searching. Place your hand on the sheet of paper. I always hold my hand up like this, so that way when everything starts moving, your hand can gently glide with it. Now, if at any point in time this paper gets snagged by the nozzle, you need to stop what you're doing. Right now it looks like it's being pushed by my connector, so I will need to adjust my connector later once this is completed to ensure that the connector does not get in the way of my prints. It's typically during this last portion where the paper will get snagged by the nozzle if it is going to get snagged. Once it slides over, adjust your paper to the next side and let it calibrate again. As you can see, my paper is no longer being moved or snagged around. That's just because the connector is now resting on top of the paper and it's not able to physically catch it. it snagged the paper, so I'm going to click the X button to stop the print. I'm going to raise my Z-axis. It looks like the paper got folded up on the side. It's possible that that's what it snagged and not the physical sheet of paper. Just to be safe, what I'm going to do is replace my zip tie here. And then I'm going to check my level of my hot end in comparison to my pita probe by placing a flat level surface underneath of it. They're fairly flush, which is what I'm looking for. As my connector got in the way with this last print, I want to adjust it so that this doesn't happen again. In order to do that, I'm going to bend it and fold it up underneath where my zip tie goes. Which is up underneath the axis. And zip tie this down. And then I'll cut off my extra. Now, there's no holes in this, so I'm going to continue using this sheet of paper. Once again, I'm going to place it where it was, come down to calibration, and run my calibration XYZ. And I will go through the same process. I will skip ahead in the video. Alright, so I've reached my second calibrating point, which is where we left off last time. It hasn't snagged yet, so I'm going to continue to watch it. Yeah, it seems that it just caught onto the fold in the paper, which was moved out of the way.
feel a little more energetic next week.
The printer is now finishing up its last point. By now you'll notice that there's two loose cables kind of hanging down. They're supposed to be there. The thermal resistor that is inside this has a tendency to break if there's not slack in the cables. So always leave a little bit of slack here. The next thing it's going to want you to do is place the steel sheet back onto the hotbed. Make sure that you line it up with the 2 screws on the back and let it drop down. Once it's on, click the knob to continue. It's now going to calibrate your Z-axis. It will basically touch 9 points in the board to ensure that it is level. Once that is completed, it's going to say XYZ calibration OK, X and Y axes are perpendicular, congrats. Then it'll continue to say the distance between tip of the nozzle and the bed surface has not been set. Please follow the manual chapter first step section first layer calibration. Once again, we're going to go to calibration. We're going to select first layer calibration. It's going to ask you if PLA is loaded. You're going to click yes, but then you're going to come in, select tune, and change the nozzle temperature to 250 for PET G. And you're going to change the bed temperature to 70 for PET G. And then you'll return to the main, go to the info screen, and wait for it to heat everything up. A good practice to do while you're waiting, raise your Z-axis some, and brush the nozzle clean. You can also take some Rindex and a rag and clean off the bed. Alright, now that I've wiped down the bed, it's going to go through and calibrate its Z-axis again. It will do this before the beginning of every print. Now it will start to do its print, and you're going to adjust it to get lower to the bed. The nozzle should be within a few millimeters of the bed. And it should be laying down a consistent layer of material that is fairly flat and even. This material that it laid down to start with was easily just picked up. That's not good. Material, a first layer like that will lead you to having material consistently pulling off. Now that that's completed, pry up this last square on this print and pick this up, your goal is to pull it all the way through, all the way to the end. Since that broke, this layer's too thin. So you want to pull it from the other end and scrape off what you can't pick up. It saved the previous setting for the first layer, so you'll just come back in here, go to calibration, hit first layer calibration, do all the settings that we said earlier, so tune it so that the bed is at 70 and that the nozzle is at 240. I just snatched some material off of the nozzle. It'll run through its 9 points of calibration again. If any material ends up on the bed, just quickly scrape it off. And once again, run through and calibrate, this time lowering its setting to the appropriate level that you want. And repeat these steps until you get it to a good level. Once again, that was too thin, so I'm going to come back through and adjust it again. Alright, once again, pry this up. At a few points during this print, there are some blank spots. That was the issue with this one. But now my first layer should be good. And you are now ready to print.